Yeah, sorry. As I was saying, I work for the library's Inquiry and Reference Service. Today's meeting is going to be monitored by our colleague Joanna Stevenson, who works for the library's Access and Outreach team, who's helped organise today's meeting. Just to warn you that Jo is going to be recording the session, and so a copy of it will be sent to you. But if you don't want to appear in person in the video, if you want to deactivate your webcams in the meantime. Also, if you've got any queries or questions as you go along, if you just raise your hand on the menu, then Jo should be able to pick that up. I'll just get rid of that. Alternatively, if you don't want to be heard on audio asking any questions, there should be the chat function, so you can type in your question as well, and Jo should be able to relay those questions to me as we proceed. So the aim of today's session is really just to give you an overview of some of the material that you can access remotely out with the library. Normally we'd be happy to welcome you and your pupils to the library, but given the current situation, unfortunately that's not going to be possible. But although you might not be able to visit the library in person, there's still a lot of material available online through the library website, which will prove of use to school librarians, school teachers, but most importantly, your pupils and your students. So what we'll do is we'll concentrate on the section that appears on the library's homepage under digital resources. So if you've not seen it before, this is the library website. The first thing I'd recommend people do is that both for yourselves and for your pupils is to join the library. Now this is free to do. We don't charge any fees or subscriptions to access to our collections. And as we'll see later, being members of the library actually gives you remote access to some of our e-resources. Now, to join is relatively simple. All you have to do is go up here to the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you'll see there's a tab that says Join or Login. So all you would have to do to join is click on that button like so, and I am logged in, so I will log out. And then all you would have to do is put your basic information there to get the ball rolling, confirm your address and so on, and agree to any terms and conditions. As I say, it's a relatively painless process, and you should be able to get logged into it relatively quickly. And the main sections we're going to cover today are our digital gallery and our e-resources, both of which you can access through this tab at the top of the library's homepage. Now, if we have time and if there's interest, what we'll do is we can also go in and I can show you how to use the library's catalogues for ordering any books or journals if you're actually plugging a plan to come into the library at a future date. But what we'll do is we'll start off by going to our digital resources.
Robbie.
Hello.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. Some people can't see your screen, so would you be able to close your screen down and share again, just to make sure that everybody can see?
Right, okay, I will. Give me a second.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone, the joys of technology.
I'm just wondering if my browser might have crashed. Jo, give me a second, I'll try to reboot it.
Sorry, folks, we have, of course, practiced all this beforehand, but it's always slightly temperamental on the day.
It worked fine last week, didn't it?
It did indeed. It looks good now. I can see it in front of me. If anybody can't see the screen share now, if you want to raise your hand, or type in the chat and just let us know. Susie, can you see it? I see you've got your hand raised. I'm not sure if that's an old hand or a new hand. Still can't see it.
Right.
I'm not sure what to suggest then. We are recording it, so I can send you a copy of the recording if you're not able to see it. I'm not sure what other options we have, unfortunately. So I would suggest that either it's probably not worth listening to, so you might want to just leave the meeting, and then you could try leave the meeting and coming back, or you could leave the meeting and I can send you a recording, but I'm really sorry about that.
Is everyone else able to see okay, Joe?
I haven't got any other hands up, so I assume so.
Right, okay, I'll assume we're okay to proceed, okay?
Yeah, thanks for your patience, everyone.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. Right, okay, so what we'll do is we'll start by going up to the tab at the top of the screen, Digital Resources. And here it'll give you various tabs and links to the key areas of the digital content, which you can access freely through the library website. So what we'll do is we'll go through them one by one. So first of all, let's go down to the bottom of the screen and let's go into the learning zone. Okay, so this is a section that was specifically designed for librarians and teachers in mind. And it's intended to offer ideas and resources which can help you use our content in preparing lessons. And so on its front page, you can see the various categories that it covers. It's also here on the right-hand side of the page, it's also got some activities. So for example, if we go into the Brainy Games worksheets, there's worksheets and activities that you can access there. They're free to download. Another one, this is a new a resource with regards the Scots language, and DC Thompson allowed us to use Ur Willie as the principal character in it. So it's a good way of encouraging pupils and students to learn about the Scots language. Let me see if the audio map will work, because you can sometimes get audio on it. So hopefully everyone heard that, and obviously we've been having a wee bit of technical trouble at the moment, but certainly what you can do is you can see how Scots are used as the language is used throughout different parts of Scotland. So you've got the audio map. You've also got additional activities as well. So for example, there's quizzes you can do, there's a comic maker you can create, and there's also other, as it says here, offline activities that you can do as well. So it's a really good fun resource in terms of being able to encourage people to actually access and learn about using the Scots language. Another one here which is really useful is our Project Blaster. Now this helps you put ideas down about how to build literacy and research skills. And again, what you can do is you can give you information and advice about what to do at particular stages of projects. It gives you additional PDFs that you can download to give you resources and checklists that help you build up research skills and the like. And as I say, everything that you see here on this site is free to access. You don't need any additional subscriptions, and it doesn't cost anything at all. Now, when you look into the categories, you can see there's actually a mix of resources available. Some we've used in conjunction with exhibitions we've run in the past. Others we've created specifically for the learning zone. So for example, if we go into geography and exploration, and we scroll down, and here it lists all the relevant sections that we think are useful for this particular topic. And so if, for example, you wanted to learn about how to read a map or how to use historical maps, you click in that section there, and there it opens up. Tend to find that they're very well, got lots of interesting illustrations, they're very visual, extremely well designed, and so all you have to do is use the menu bars at the top and you go into various sections. What you also find with a lot of the material in the Learning Zone is they contain lots of downloads, and they're mostly in PDF form. So for example, if there's like background resources which will help teachers or librarians build up study packs for their pupils, you can download that as well. There's also activity packs you can download specifically for your pupils and students as well. So if we come out of that one, one to particularly highlight in the creativity section you'll find something that we refer to as the Ideas Factory. This chap here is the Scottish playwright Peter Arnott, and a number of years ago he was once the library's writer in residence, and he helped us create this particular platform called the Ideas Factory. And as an example for it, he was writing a short story called Death in the Arctic. So what you're able to do is you're able to download PDFs which actually take through the thought process and the writing process that he used to come up with the short story itself. But even if you're not going into that much detail, there's good PDFs you can download about how to get started. So this tells you where, what, who, how does it work. It gives you information about how you can go about actually starting the process of producing something through creative writing, whether it's a story, whether it's a poem, whether it's a play. So a resource like this is really good, because it's also transferable skills that you're getting from this as well. So you don't have to just apply it for creative writing courses. You can also use it towards critical writing courses as well. If we come out of that one and we go back into the others, so for example, literature and language, here we've highlighted a few bits and pieces that are relevant to particular topics of language and writing. And often in these particular sections, we'll maybe have like a concentration on Scottish elements. So for example, here we've got a dedicated section that we've curated with regards science fiction in Scotland. As well as like downloadable PDFs, they'll sometimes contain videos which will include interviews of academics and writers and so on. So things like this are really good in terms of as a good way of an entrance into a particular topic for people who are maybe aren't familiar with science fiction writing in Scotland itself. Has anyone got any queries about the Learning Zone? Nope. If not, what we'll do is we'll come back out and we'll move on to the next section. So the next section I'll show you is a relatively new addition to the library's website, and it's called the Data Foundry. Now, this is our platform for collections of data. So that's metadata, organizational data, maps and spatial data, but also data from other digitized collections, which can be analysed and interpreted in a variety of ways. So if you scroll down the screen, oh sorry, actually no, it's up at the top. If you go up to the top of the menu there, if you click on projects, it gives you examples whereby people have been able to take raw data and raw information from the library's collections and remanipulate them and use them in a variety of interesting ways. So, for example, our colleagues in the map library have been able to take some raw data, and they've now been able to create an actual layer for their dedicated map viewers, whereby you can actually see various civic and parliamentary boundaries, and they've been able to suppress them on top of maps of Edinburgh. So it helped create a really good tool for historical research and the like. We've also got some interesting projects that have been submitted by people who have used the collections in a variety of interesting ways. And I'll just highlight one of them here. So this was part of a project that was carried out from students at Edinburgh University. And what they were doing is they were taking some these collections and manipulating them and interpreting them in various interesting ways. And one of them was this one here, when a group of students took the Encyclopedia Britannica and they basically turned it into a game of Minecraft. So if we go into the video, I'll play it for a few seconds. So as you can see there, rather than look through like dozens of printed volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica, you can actually go into this platform and you can actually browse through the encyclopedia as if you're taking part in an actual Minecraft world game. If we come out and go back out to projects, another one that we've recently seen done was that the library's artist in residence, Martin Deasley, he was able to use some AI and other creative tools to redraw and repurpose some maps and photographs from the library's collections, including images of both the Forth Rail Bridge and the Tay Bridge as well, to produce some really interesting works. So it's a new part of the library's websites, and it's going to be evolving and expanding all over the time. We do now have a digital scholarship librarian, Sarah Ames. So if you've got any queries or you want any further information about the Data Foundry, there should be a contact email address for her on the Data Foundry mini site. But it's certainly a new aspect to the library website. And as I say, it's something that we're going to be evolving over time. So I'll come back out of that into the digital gallery. Here we go. And so the next up is another relatively new section of the library's website, the Moving Image Archive. Now, this used to be known as the Scottish Screen Archive when it was a separate body, and it was originally housed out at Hillington Industrial Estate on the south side of Glasgow. So it wasn't particularly accessible for people to go and visit. But when it fell under our organisational umbrella, its name was changed to the Moving Image Archive, and it was moved into a new facility in Glasgow's Kelvin Hall. Now, this has made it more accessible for visitors, but our colleagues have also digitised much of their film collections and made them available through the website. So this is effectively the archive of Scotland's moving image. So that means it will contain TV films, cine films, home videos, sound recordings, and it covers a whole broad range of subjects with material produced by students, amateur filmmakers, as well as professional filmmaking organisations. Now, usually on the front page, the Moving Image Archive will have a different topic each month. Up until last week, with the schools going back, they had examples of films about schools within the collections. But here, for example, they've got a film up about Loch Lomond Nature Reserve. Now, if you're ever on the website and you see this little play icon here, that means you should be able to play a clip of it. So let's play this to start with. If you find that the image is too small, you do also have the option to make it go full screen as well. Now, not everything is able to be seen online, largely due to copyright restrictions. Some of the films that they've got within the archive can only be seen at the Kelvin Hall itself. You can browse through the moving image collections using the search and the browse and search function, which appears up here in the top right-hand corner. Now, you may be thinking, how are these films going to be able to help your students? What I would say is that the range of subjects covered is extremely broad, and it would be likely of interest to those studying subjects across the board. For example, if we go into the search and browse function, what you can do is you can actually have a breakdown of the various subjects that are covered. So if we scroll down and say we choose science and technology, say, for example, you've got someone who is researching early computers and wants to learn more about the use of computers in society, or even if they're writing a bit of creative writing about early computers, and like, you can find this film here. Click on that.
We're not hearing sound on these because we're watching it through Robbie's computer, but if you are watching this on your own computer, you would be able to hear it, because this one is a sound film.
Is the sound still not working?
Yeah.
Sorry about that, folks. So what you can do with the Moving Image Archive, as I say, you can search through a number of topics, and from an inquiry point of view, we are finding them more and more useful in terms of supporting our inquiry work, particularly with regards to people who have maybe got family history inquiries relating to the last 100 years. If you're interested in the contents of the Moving Image Archive, there is a session about the archive and Scotland on Screen, which I believe is due to be held on the 30th of September at 4 p.m. So if you check out the library's events page and our Eventbrite page, you should be able to get information about signing up for that particular session. So we'll go back into digital resources. And the next section that we'll come on to is one of the more popular sections of the library website, which is the map images. We've got the largest map collection in Scotland, and they're housed up at our Causewayside building. I think at the last count we've got in the region of between 2.5 to 3 million maps within the library's collections. And to see them in person, you normally have to book an appointment. But where possible, we're trying to make as many of these maps available to view online. At the moment, though, we've only scratched the surface. We've only digitised about 10% of the library's map collections. However, what we have digitised should prove of use to several subjects. So, for example, history, geography, even art as well. Students of those topics should find the map collections very useful. Now, where we add any new maps, they'll be listed here at the top left-hand corner. And if we click into them, so there, for example, we've got some new additional maps of detailed maps of the Leith area of Edinburgh. And as you can see, you can get like a lot of information from the maps themselves. If we go back to the Map Images website, the main categories that they've got it broken down to appear here, down on the left-hand side. Often the easiest place to start is Find by Place. So if we click on Find by Place, and you see that what it does is it divides Scotland, England and Wales into a series of grid lines, because that's the thing, we don't just have maps of Scotland within the collections, we've also got maps of the Ordnance Survey maps of England and Wales as well. But say, for example, you had one of your pupils and they were doing a project whereby they wanted to see how Edinburgh had changed down the years. What you can do is you can scroll in on Edinburgh, choose the particular area you're interested in, so let's choose the city centre. Here on the left-hand side, you can choose which series of maps you're going to look at. So at the moment, it defaults to the 6-inch series. But if we change it to the 25-inch, and we zoom in again, click in the box, and any of the maps that cover that box there for that series should appear here on the right-hand side. So let's choose one from 1914. We click on that, opens up the map, but what you can do is you can freely zoom in on it. The 25-inch is a particularly detailed series, so you get a lot of information contained therein. What you can also do is, on the map page, is you can also choose to explore georeference maps. So whereas before you might have to be jumping back and forward to choose a map to look at, here what this function does is it effectively fuses multiple maps together. So now if we scroll out, you can see that all the Ordnance Survey maps from the 1825, the 25-inch series rather, have been joined together. So say for example you wanted to be looking at Edinburgh, but then you wanted to also look at Queensferry, all you would have to do is just zoom out, zoom in, and you can see how Queensferry was like on this particular map series as well. Even if you wanted to go to the other side of the country, you can quickly zoom out and then zoom back in, and you're now looking down at Glasgow. Say, for example, you wanted to see, compare and contrast and see how the city had changed. You see here there's an option that says side by side. What that does is that compares modern satellite images with these historic maps. So if we click on side by side, you see it divides the screen into two. So here on the left-hand side, we get the historic map. And here on the right-hand side, we get a modern satellite view of what the Glasgow city is like. So here you can see how dramatically the area has changed. If we zoom out slightly and move along, here on the right, we're zooming in on the Kingston Bridge, which crosses the Clyde. And here on the left, you can see the district of Anderston, which was cleared to make way for the M8 motorway and the Kingston Bridge itself. So in terms of being able to like quickly compare and contrast how towns and cities have developed, the side-by-side is a really good tool. There's not just maps of Scotland included. As I say, we've also got the Ordnance Survey maps of England and Wales within the collections. We've also got maps from further afield. So for example, if you have any of your classes who are maybe researching the First World War, or we've got copies of the military maps from the trench maps from the First World War within the collections. So they're within the military map section, here under the trench maps. And if we choose zoomable map option, so what it does is it takes us over to France and Flanders. It divides the Western Front up into sections. And if we scroll in on a particular sector of the front, so here round about La Basse and Oche, click on that. And say, for example, one of your classes who was researching the battles from 1917, you choose then the 1917 map. And if we zoom in on it, you can see how detailed it is. These blue lines here are the British and the Allied lines. The red lines are the German trenches and the German positions. And here you'll actually also see there's actually the names of the trenches being included as well. Often these trenches would reflect the soldiers who dug them or who were initially based there. So for example, you can see we've got Glasgow Street, so it's possibly manned by a Scottish regiment at some point. And here it's quite amazing because you can actually see how close the actual trenches were at particular points. There's also shell craters and mine craters marked as well. So if you've got any of your classes are doing any sort of research into the First World War, these trench maps would probably be a really interesting way for them to actually see how the lines were and how they developed over the years. We go back to the map images there, and like I say, there's various other categories which include different styles of maps, different styles of atlas. Town plans and views are quite interesting because sometimes they have like really detailed maps of like town centres and city centres as well. Again, the maps are a fantastic website, it's a fantastic resource, and you can use it across a variety of disciplines to get the most out of them. But hopefully they would be proved useful to your pupils for some of their projects. Any questions on the map sites? Nope.
No questions in the chat.
Really good. So back to the digital resources, and what we'll do is we'll talk about these two sections in detail, the digital gallery and the e-resources. Now, the digital gallery is the main platform we use to house any material that we've digitised ourselves from within our own collections, or if we've created any digital content in conjunction with any exhibitions or events that we're staging at the library. So what you can do is you can browse these by category, to break them down into various categories, or alternatively, you can just see them in an A to Z list as well. So for example, this resource in the 1715 Jacobite Uprising was created when we staged a major exhibition on the Jacobites a couple of years ago. Just show you. So it gives you a breakdown, gives you visual images, timelines, key characters. It's a really good resource in terms of like finding out good factual information about the characters involved in the Jacobite uprisings. But as well as including items that we used in the exhibitions, what we'll also try to do is we'll also try to include sections for teachers. So if, for example, you are doing a project that relates to the Jacobites at all, you can download these particular reading lists. You can download the activity sheets. Also, where possible, is we'll try to put additional useful links as well. So if we're aware of a particular organisation or a particular website that has really good links to material on Jacobites, we'll have them listed up there. Now, as well as material relating to exhibitions and the like, it also gives us a chance to digitise some of the most valuable and rare items within the library's collections. So if we scroll down the list and if we find the last letter of Mary Queen of Scots. Now, as you can imagine, the last letter of Mary Queen of Scots is an extremely valuable and unique item in the world. It's one of a kind, as you could well imagine. And it's normally kept under lock and key. It very rarely gets seen in person. But a couple of years ago, we took it out and we put it on public display, and the queues to see it ran the entire length of George Forth Bridge. So because of its popularity, we decided to make this web feature of it. So what you can do is you can actually get some historical background to Mary, her reign, and why she was executed. We've also got an English translation of it, because one of the bits of feedback that we got from people was that they couldn't understand what the letter was saying. Because although she was the Queen of Scots and she was born in Scotland, Mary was educated in France, so French was effectively her mother tongue. So as a result, her final words were written down in French. And if, like me, je ne parle pas français, what you can now do is you can now go onto the website and you actually get a translation, so you can actually see what her final words said. If you're confident in French and you can't actually read the original text, it gives you a French transcription as well. So we're going to be trying to do more and more of this over the coming years in terms of digitising the unique items within libraries' collections and trying to make them available to as broad an audience as possible. But it's not just Scottish material we've got within the collections. Although being the National Library of Scotland, we've got a responsibility to collect material relating to Scotland and the Scots. We've also got a responsibility to collect material from throughout the world and promote ideas of different cultures as well. So, for example, if we scroll down, we have, if I can find it, yep, there we go. We've created this collection of Soviet posters. Now, these were brought back from Russia, the Russia of the 1930s, by a man called Arthur Woodburn. During the First World War, Woodburn was a conscientious objector. In the 1920s, he became a Labour MP for Clackmannanshire. And in the 1930s, like a lot of Scottish politicians and writers, he looked to the Soviet Union for inspiration. And he actually paid a visit to the Soviet Union in, I think it was 1932. And while he was there, he had with him a suitcase which he filled with a whole plethora of ephemera. So he had postcards, he had playbills, he had political posters, and he brought it home with him to Scotland. And in the 1950s, when he retired from politics and he donated his collections to the National Library, it included this small suitcase. And when the curators opened it, they discovered this treasure trove of material brought back from Soviet Russia. So, for example, if we choose this one here, this is the viewer that you'll get when you're looking at material from the digital archive. It will open up like this. But what you can do is you can use that to magnify it, make it that little bit bigger. Also, what we'll try to do as well is that if there's any material that you're looking at on screen, we'll try to put down some cataloguing information. So, for example, it will give us a background of its particular title. Luckily enough, it gives us a translation. So this is all about collectivization, encouraging agricultural workers to join collective farms. Gives a bit of background information, and it also gives us the shelf mark. So if, for example, anyone did want to come into the library and want to look at it, they can find it on the shelf mark and have an order placed for the material. Now, as well as just like looking through material on the digital gallery, it's also possible to browse through material that we've digitised. So, for example, we've got this here, which is a collection of Scottish Post Office directories that we've digitised. And they have a browse and search function. So you can go into this, and we've broken down into various categories: Scotland, those of various counties, but also towns. So say, for example, you had one of your pupils who were doing a project about Edinburgh, or it could be any of these numbers of towns. Let's choose Glasgow for a change. Glasgow, and say, for example, they wanted to see who was living, what sort of businesses were at a particular address in 1900. You'd find a particular date range, scroll down until you find the relevant date. Here we go, 1900, click on that. And then what you can do is you can search within it, or alternatively, if you just want to browse through it, you can create a grid view. And then from that, if you see a particular page that you're interested in, give it a click, give it a few seconds, and it gives you a magnified version. The great thing about these particular items is we've also made them available to download. So you can either download them as a text file, as a PDF, a composite text file, or alternatively, if you just want a particular page, once you find it, you can also download a JPEG image of it as well. So again, if you've got any of your students who are doing a local history project, things like the post office directories would prove really useful for that as well. And we're adding stuff to the digital gallery all the time. You don't need a login or a password to access the digital gallery. Anyone can access it from around the world. Now, if you remember at the start, I said it would be advantageous for you to join the library, as your membership would give you free access to some of the resources. We'll come into that section now. That is called the e-resources. Now, whereas we create the content in the digital gallery from within our own collections, the e-resources are commercially produced databases to which you usually have to pay for. Now, our subscription allows our library members to access these resources, though there are some restrictions. They're listed here. The principal one is that you have to be a member of the library and you have to have your main residential address in Scotland. This geographical restriction has been put in place by the publishers of these databases. On the one hand, they can't be seen to be charging universities and colleges thousands of pounds, only for us to be able to make it freely available to view for everyone. So they put a couple of terms and conditions in. The main one is that if you want to access the e-resources remotely, you must have your main residential address in Scotland. The second thing is that if you're affiliated to a further or higher education institution, then you might not be able to access some of the e-resources remotely. Again, this is all to do with the licensing arrangement that the publishers have with various college and university libraries. So if ever you're on the e-resources and you're having difficulty in terms of accessing them, then check the terms and conditions and make sure it's not one of these databases listed. The other thing to warn you about is the access type. They're broken down. Hello, sorry.
Can I just ask, just to clarify, the higher and further education restriction, that wouldn't apply to schools?
No, it wouldn't necessarily apply to schools, but if we've got anyone who's attending today is a librarian at a college, that might be classed as a further education institution. So there could be a restriction in place.
Great, thanks very much. So
in terms of the access type, they're broken down into 3 categories. You've got, as it says there, you've got open access, where you can open access resources without you need to log in. Password protected ones, which is the vast bulk of the e-resources, but there are also some that are available on site only. So that means that they can only be accessed by network computers in the library reading rooms, either at the George Forth Bridge building in Edinburgh or at the Kelvin Hall through in Glasgow. Again, it's all to do with the licensing restrictions that have been put in place by the publishers. But what you can do is you can browse by title, you can browse by subject. Again, the range of subjects is particularly broad. I won't go through every single one, but what I'll do is I'll highlight some databases that we know from experience that pupils have found extremely useful. So the first one that we'll do is we'll look under the letter C, and it's a database called Credo Reference. Now, I've made the telltale mistake. As it says there, see there at the moment, it's saying please log in or register for access. That's because I have forgotten to log in. And now if I go down, we'll hopefully see, yeah, now as you can see, the access box has changed. Whereas beforehand it was saying that I had to register to access it. It now tells me, because I'm logged in, I've got permission to use the resource. So what I'll do is you click on the access link, and after a few seconds, it should hopefully open up that particular database. Yep, there we go. So what's great about Credo? Well, how do the majority of us look for stuff online nowadays? We Google it, don't we? And what are often the first hits? Entries from Wikipedia. Now, it might not be a great look for students if you're only relying on Wikipedia for your fact checking or citations. The great thing about Credo Reference is that it's a database which draws numerous respected reference titles together on one single platform. Often on the front page, it'll have popular topics. But say, for example, you had someone who is doing an essay on science and they want to find out a bit about Albert Einstein. So if we just put Albert Einstein in parentheses, do a search, and hopefully, and so straight away up at the top, you've got an entry from the Hutchison Dictionary of Scientific Biography, okay? So if we expand that, and you can see it's a very detailed entry. And if we scroll down, say for example, one of your pupils has been looking to fact check some information about Einstein, they'd be able to use that. The great thing about this as well is that what we're finding from pupils is that more and more are getting marked down about how they're citing, how they're referencing material. The great thing about this is it actually tells you how you can reference or cite the material based on what referencing system. So for example, you've got APA, you've got Chicago, you've got Harvard, and you've got the MLA systems. So what's great about this is it means that people can find robust information, and it enables them to cite it properly. So they're not having to just rely on entries that they find either on Google or Wikipedia.
Robbie,
if we go back, hello.
Can I just ask, I think we've got quite a few English teachers today. Would there be things like authors and
there should be. So for example, why don't we try Samuel Beckett?
I couldn't help seeing that you had something about Nabokov. I've got somebody who's studying for their advanced higher.
Right.
Nabokov, so I just couldn't help seeing that was there. I just wonder if there's anything useful as regards kind of literary criticism about some of his more obscure works.
Well, the thing about Credo references, it's more an encyclopedia database. So it's more with regards like giving you the actual facts and the information from it. But what you can do is, if we choose Nabokov as an example, and if it opens, now you see here, as well as giving you entries in various publications, okay, you'll see here, it also gives you a thought cloud. And it gives you like various like other relevant topics. So say for example, you wanted to, you know, you're doing something about Nabokov, and your pupil maybe wants to look at more general stuff about Russian literature. Because you've got the thought heading here, what you can then do is, if we then click on Russian literature, you see that it ends up immediately giving you listings of articles in various encyclopedias and reference works about Russian literature, but you can see here it's also expanded it. So for example, you've got Nabokov, you've got famous authors like Onegin, Turgenev, Zhukovsky, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, and it also highlights famous works. So for example, War and Peace, Crime and Punishment. There's also, it gives you lists of Russian language poets and the like. So it's a great tool in terms of if you're not entirely familiar with a particular topic, or you want to expand on learning about a particular topic, you can use that thought cloud to actually expand the range of topics that you're covering. It's also quite useful as well, because as well as articles, it also includes images. So if we choose that, and often it'll have portraits of events from novels that have been illustrated. So for you, for example, let's open up this one. There you've got an illustration from like one of the editions of Crime and Punishment. So as well as actually giving you textual information, it also contains really useful visual information as well. And again, the great thing about it is that it doesn't cost anything, you know, completely free to access. And if we open it up, you can, so here, for example, we've opened up the entry on Russian literature that appears in Phillips Encyclopedia. So here as before, it gives us the entry, it gives us the citation you can use. But here on the right-hand side, it also gives you suggestions for related searches. It also gives you suggestions for related articles as well.
Brilliant.
You know, so in terms of being able to search through multiple topics and get robust information, Credo reference really is fantastic. And as I say, it's a broad range of topics that you can search through. So if you haven't used it before, I would suggest, like all the stuff on the library website, is just have a play around of it, make yourself familiar with it, and then maybe roll it out to your pupils and your students. And you never know, if you start finding Credo reference really useful, you'll probably end up using it for your own work as well. So I'd certainly heartily recommend Credo reference for one of the databases that we use. Another one that we'll try is in our newspaper databases. So we'll go to browse by subject, newspapers. Now, up until recently, the majority of the newspaper databases were only available to use on the library premises, but we've been able to extend access remotely, which is a big bonus for anyone who's needing access to multiple titles from multiple publishers, and most importantly, from multiple countries as well. So, for example, one of the ones that we've recently been able to extend access is this one here called Factiva. Now, Factiva started out as a business information database, but it's expanded and it currently covers something in the region of 41,000 titles from throughout the world. So it's not just UK titles. You'll be able to look at up-to-date information from titles published across the globe. So, for example, say you've got a modern studies class, and they're wanting to see what international reaction is to what's happening in Belarus at the moment. If we put in Minsk as a keyword, and if we narrow it down to the last week, and we do a search, then hopefully, there we go. So you can see there's in the region of 3,000 entries that include references to Minsk. But what you can do is here on the left-hand side, you've got categories that you can narrow down. So say, for example, you want to see how it's getting covered in America. What you can do is you can now change the region to United States.
Wow.
And if this works, there we go. You can see you're getting all sorts of articles from the Associated Press, World Service, Sputnik. I'm not entirely sure, you wouldn't be trusting everything that's coming out in the Sputnik news service, but there you go. But Reuters, there's a whole range of stuff. If we modify it, one of the topics which I would imagine is going to get us thousands of hits would be Donald Trump. You can see that 36,000 hits. And again, what you can do is down here, as well as narrowing it down to the region. Say, for example, you wanted to look at any articles that had appeared by USA Today, or let's see if we can find, yeah, Washington Post. Click on that, and there we go. So, for example, you're actually getting free access to it. And this is the other great thing about Factiva is it gives you free access to often newspapers which have the majority of their content now behind paywalls. So it's a real advantage about being able to access this database remotely. So say, for example, you wanted to had a student who was interested in this article here. If we click on that, this is how Factiva converts its articles. Now, it strips off any photographs or images, but what it will do is it will give you the reference information at the top. So it will tell you who the author is, when it was published, who published it, how many words there are, and then it will give you the full text of the article itself. And the great thing about this, which it also is, you can download these. So say, for example, I wanted to download a copy of this article here. You select the article, choose the download button, and if you choose headline article on TOC, after a couple of seconds, once this goes through, yep, there we go. So I open it up, and in the front page, it gives me the basic information, but there I go, I've got that entire article. And again, what I can do is now that I've got the PDF, I can print it off, so if I want to have a reference copy. Alternatively, I can save this onto my computer, and if I need to use the PDF functions in terms of highlighting any key phrases, any words or anything, I'll be able to do that as well using the PDF search functions as well. So in terms of actually being able to give you access to up-to-date newspapers and news agency articles from throughout the world, Factiva is absolutely fantastic, and I would heartily recommend it for any modern study classes that you've got this year.
Robbie.
Hello.
Got a wee question.
Yeah.
With regards to Factiva, would you find things like book reviews and things like that in there?
Yeah, so I'll go back into Factiva. So let's try Hilary Mantel. Yeah, so there, so we've got lots of like pieces about. Now, if we scroll down here, yeah, for a subject, yeah, reviews. Just click on that. So there, for example, you've got the Press Association's newswire with 5 new books to read this week. You've got other reviews showing up. So depending on which particular topic, which particular book that you're looking for, then yeah, there's every chance that you'll be able to find book reviews. The great thing about Factiva is, as well as covering mainstream titles, it also includes some trade titles as well. Now, I'm not entirely sure how many. I think it might include the Times Educational Supplement, but don't quote me on that. What you can do, however, is if you're looking to see if a particular title is included, you can, in the search builder, if you go to source, yep, there we go, Times Educational Supplement. So what you can do is, in that box there, in the source box, you can actually type in the title of the particular paper or the publication that you're after. And if it's available in Factiva, you'll be able to search through it. Another newspaper source that I would recommend as well is this one here, Access UK and Scotland newspapers. Okay. Now, whereas Factiva will offer international coverage, sometimes it doesn't include more regional, local titles, some of the smaller Scottish titles. But the good thing is, if anyone needs access to any Scottish titles, then we've got a couple of databases, Access and InfoTrack, which are good options. But I'll show you Access. So once this page opens up, yep, there we go. What we can do is we can create an A to Z source list. So say, for example, you've got anyone who's wanting to look at any pieces in the Aberdeen Evening Express. You select it off the list. And then, yep, there we go. And so say, for example, what it'll do at the top is it'll give you the coverage. I think the assumption from a lot of people is that everything is available to view online at the moment. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And in terms of digitised newspapers, you've either got really older historic titles, which have been covered by things like the Scotsman Digital Archive, which covers 1817 to 1950. You've also got things like the British Newspaper Archive. But then there's a gap, because these databases tend to cover up until the 1950s. Then jumps until around about the 1990s or so before often these databases pick up again. In this instance, though, Access will give you access to the Aberdeen Evening Express from 2015 to 2020. So if we just put in pandemic, is that covered? And hopefully, if it's going to work. Yeah, there we go. So any references to the phrase pandemic, and you can see here on the left hand side, it gives you a date range of, so it's not been mentioned, it's barely been mentioned for the first 4 years, and then in 2020 there's 1,600 references to the phrase in the Aberdeen Evening Express alone. So what you can do is you can use that to manage yourself around how stories are being covered by different newspapers within Scotland itself. Now, I'm just conscious that we're quickly running out of time, so I'll just quickly go into another database which I'd recommend, which is JSTOR. Now, you may be familiar with JSTOR already, but if not, I would suggest it's a must-use. What it does is it gives you access to thousands of academic titles across a variety of topics by numerous publishers. Good thing about it is you can browse by subject. So say, for example, it's you're going to be doing any courses relating to African American studies. By clicking on the subject heading, it gives you a listing of the basic titles that they cover under that subject heading. But the good thing about it is it gives you an actual search box here whereby you can search through it. So say, for example, you've got someone who's doing a project about abolitionists. If we do a search for Frederick Douglass, and there we go, we've got 3,000 hits about Frederick Douglass, okay? And you can see from the dates, a lot of these articles are material that's produced a long time ago. So again, it's quite interesting because you're able to compare and contrast how academic literature has maybe changed its standpoints on particular topics. Again, here on the left-hand side, you've got a breakdown of the various subjects that are available as well. So say, for example, you were interested in this particular article here. If we open it up, so what you can do is you can either view the article on screen, or alternatively, you can download a copy of it on PDF. And again, similar to Factiva, it's free to do. You can save it, you can print it off a copy, you can save it onto your computer, which will give you a digital copy. So JSTOR is free to access, and I can't emphasize the broad range of topics that you've got to work through. As well as browsing by subject, what you can also do is you can just do a search at the top. So for example, if I just put in Robert the Bruce and search all content, this will search through every single topic that's going. And disappointingly, there's only 607 results. But still, it gives you like an idea of like the range of topics in which it's referenced. And again, what you can do is you can download any articles that you're interested in.
We've had a question, Robbie, about JSTOR and literary criticism. So I don't know if we can maybe do a search for, again, an author or a book title and just see what comes up.
Yeah, I can do. So again, if I just go in and we'll try Samuel Beckett. So again, if we just expand. Now, the one slight thing that sometimes is irritating about JSTOR is a lot of the subject headings they use are American, kind of like international academia, so they might not necessarily be the ones that we would use at home, but certainly there is a section in language and literature, and so again, what you could do, so there, for example, conversations with Samuel Beckett. And oh, is it working? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So again, you've got text here. What you can also do as well is if you've found a particular article that you're interested in, if you actually want to fast track through to any references, you'll see here there's a box that says View 21 Search Matches. If you click on that, it'll highlight how many hits, i.e. the terms that we've looked for, appear on particular pages. So he's mentioned 7 times on page 5. So if we click on that, it takes us through to the 5th page of that article there. It doesn't highlight the actual phrase that you've looked for, unfortunately, but certainly it helps you navigate through the articles just that little bit quicker. But more often not, the easiest thing to do is just, because it doesn't cost anything, as long as you're just going to use it for your own personal reference, you're free to download a copy as well. One thing I would say about JSTOR though is that some of the more latest up-to-date editions of the journals that are included aren't included on JSTOR in terms of their online content. Sometimes there's an embargo of 2 or 3 years. So when you're on JSTOR, you often notice that maybe the latest copies of editions available maybe only date from, like, say, 2016, 2017. That's because a lot of these titles are still published, and so they still want to encourage universities and colleges to still have subscriptions to printed editions and not just rely on the electronic ones. But if I go into Browse by Title, and if we just choose the letter S, and if we find Scottish Historical Review, say for example you've got a particular journal in mind and you want to actually see what the coverage has been like over a sustained period of time. What you can do is, once you get the full title record up like so, if you scroll down, you can actually expand the various decades. So say for example, we want to see what the latest edition available is. So the latest edition that they've got available on JSTOR is 2014. And then to view the contents of the entire contents of that journal issue, you would just click on the hyperlink, give it a few seconds, and there we go. It gives you the front matter, and then it gives you like the various other articles, and you can access any one. So for example, someone was asking earlier about reviews. Often in JSTOR, you'll be able to find reviews. So as you can see here in Scottish Historical Review, they've got sections about books that are getting reviewed. So if, for example, you wanted to look at this particular review of the book about Owen Glendower, just as looking for any other article, you click on the hyperlink, give it a couple of seconds, and there you go. You've got the review page there. And again, you can print off copies for your own reference. Any more questions about JSTOR? Nope. Well, like I say, the e-resources are the ones that you really need to have a membership to the library to access. So as I say, if you're coming into the library website for the first time, the first thing to do is join using that tab in the top right-hand corner of the home page, and that should let you into it. Has anyone got any questions about anything that we've covered? I realise it's a lot to kind of like squeeze in an hour, but has anyone got any questions they want to ask just now?
I missed the first 10 minutes. I wonder if you could just go over how I could get my students to join.
Right, okay, so it's relatively painless. All you have to do is on the library homepage, there's a tab there in the right-hand corner, login.
Oh.
Click on that, and then the front page, it'll just ask you to enter your data. So title, first name, surname, email, postcode, address. As I say, make sure you get them to select Scotland. If they select any other country, then it might restrict what access they can get on the e-resources itself. And then you need to specify what you are, whether or not you're a student, a school student, and so on. But yeah, the great thing is, it doesn't cost anything. We will never charge you anything to use, because you guys already pay for the library. The library is paid through public taxation, so we won't charge you for anything. The only time you ever get charged for anything in the library would be if, for example, you or one of your students came in and you want to have copies made of an item from within the collections. We've got an imaging service and there are fees attached for that. But in terms of just coming in to use libraries collections or use our website, we will not charge you for it. Everything should be free to access. Any more questions about the library website? No. Right, there's one other website that I will quickly recommend, because at the moment you can access their collections for free. This is SCRAN. This is part of Historic Environment Scotland, and because of the to kind of like enable further learning from home, up until the end of October, they're making all their collections available to view freely. Usually you have to have a subscription service, and often if you want to download any copies of their images, you have to pay for them. But until the end of October, it's going to be free. So if you've got any students looking at any sort of imagery and they need reference pictures, I would thoroughly recommend SCRAN, because again, it covers a whole range of topics and it draws from a variety of sources. Its main sources it draws from are the resources of Historic Environment Scotland, but they also draw from like a lot of other public municipal galleries, newspaper archives and so on. So the range of stuff that you can find is really quite amazing. So if, for example, we put in Auckland Palace, and you get hundreds of pictures. Now, at the moment on their temporary site, say if we choose this one here, it doesn't look like much as the thumbnail there, but what you can do is, because it's free to access, you can actually effectively buy a copy for free, and it's effectively a higher resolution scan. I think it's JPEGs they mostly use, but if you've got anyone who's going to be interested in needing reference imagery for any sort of projects, then I'd thoroughly recommend using SCRAN and take advantage of the free offer while you can. Right, I think that is now coming up for 5:10. So has anyone got any final questions before we call it a day today?
Do you want to maybe mention the catalogue, Robbie, and the ebooks?
Yes, I can do. If we go back to the catalogue. So, catalogue's up there. Library search is the option you want. Okay, so this is a relatively new platform. We moved over onto this just under 2 years ago, so it's a bit more complicated than the previous cataloguing platform we used to use. And what you can do with it is you can search through printed items within libraries collections, but you can also search through electronic resources as well. So say, for example, you've got a modern studies student who's looking into discrimination off the back of the Black Lives Matter movement. If we do everyday discrimination as a topic search. It would default to searching through the library collections. Okay, so you see here that the first hits that we're starting to get are saying electronic legal deposit item. Now, if I open up a record, if it's going to let me. Yep, there we go. Okay, so if ever you see a catalogue record and it has this access requirement note here, that means that you won't be able to access it from home. This will be something that we'll have received through what they refer to as non-print legal deposit. We're Scotland's largest library, and that's primarily because we're Scotland's library of legal deposit. So that means that publishers within the UK, if we ask them, we can request that they deposit their material within our collections. Now, the unfortunate thing is that we don't get the material automatically. The only library in the UK that has that right is the British Library down in London. But there was a change to the legal deposit legislation a couple of years ago, and it's now possible for publishers, instead of giving us physical copies, to deposit electronic copies instead. So often what happens is a master copy will be deposited in the British Library, and then it will be streamed out to the other legal deposit libraries. So that's ourselves, the National Library of Wales, Trinity College in Dublin, and Oxford and Cambridge University libraries. The downside, however, is that although it's in digital format, it's not available remotely and you can't access it from your laptop. You have to be in the library and you have to be using one of the library's network computers to be able to see that. So if ever you find a catalogue record like so, and it's got that access requirement, unfortunately you would have to go into the library to have a look at it. And you're finding that more and more publishers are starting to do that. There's a couple such as Routledge and Taylor and Francis. They've now fully migrated over to non-print legal deposit, so they don't supply any physical copies anymore to the legal deposit libraries. Everything is coming in a digital format. However, there is some of that material that you can access online. So if we go to, we change the library collections, and if we go to extended search instead, so there, for example, we've got a copy there. The good thing is that it's got this open padlock sign next to it, and it tells us the full text is available. So if we open up this article, and if we click on full text available, hopefully it should, yep, there we go. Yeah. And there it gives us the full text. And again, the good thing about this one is that we should, oops, clear that. Again, with this particular database here, so this is part of the Sage Journals database. Again, it's got useful tools here on the left-hand side, so you can download PDF copies of it. You can also cite it. So, for example, if you want ideas about, you want an idea about how you should be citing it in any essays or like, if there's any figures or tables that appear, you should hopefully, yeah, there we go. It narrows it down there. So if you've got anyone who's not able to come into the library in person, and we appreciate, given what's going on in the wider world, that might not be possible for everyone. If they're searching on the library catalogue, if they broaden the search collections to extended search, if you're lucky, you will find that there's a lot of open access articles will appear. And again, they're across like a variety of topics. So here, for example, if you had anyone who was, as I say, looking for any articles relating to the African-American experience with regards to criminal justice, again, something like this would probably be like really useful. And again, you just look for one that's got the open padlock. That should indicate that it's open access. Give it a few seconds, and there we go. Brilliant. Again, it's a Sage database one, so that's obviously a useful database to know about. And the layout will be standard academic publication style. So it'll give you an abstract, and then it'll break it down into the actual method, the actual discussion, references, and so on and so forth. So although people might not necessarily be able to come into the library at the moment, certainly the best thing to do is have a play around in our catalogue, and it could well be that you might be able to find a lot of useful open access material available electronically. Any questions on the catalogue at the moment? Nope. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Joe, do you think there's anything we've not covered? Do you think that'll be enough for today's session?
I think that's probably about it. If anybody has any questions, then obviously give us a shout now, or feel free to email myself. I contacted you all previously, so it's j.stevenson@nls.uk. Maybe mention the inquiry service, Robbie?
Yes, so we appreciate that because of the scale of the library's collections, not everything's always particularly easy to find. So if you're having any bother like accessing the library's catalogues, or possibly you've encountered any problems using the library's e-resources, we do have a dedicated inquiries team. So all you would have to do is on the homepage, go to contact, and there should be Ask a Librarian. And you've got a couple of choices. You've got this box here that you can fill out, and that sends us an inquiry ticket. So then either a curator or a member of the inquiry team would get back to you. Or alternatively, if you want to actually have like a online conversation or actual chat with someone, we do run a online chat service between 10 AM and 4 PM. So if during your working day you encounter a problem and you just want to have like a quick response, if you go into the chat service, we can usually respond to any like basic inquiries. Anything that's more detailed, like if you're wanting us to advise about what the content is of a particular journal, or to try to track down any relevant material, is best send it in the actual Ask a Question form itself. Okay. Any questions after that? Nope, I'll take the silence as that you're happy with that. As I say, sorry if that was a bit of a lot of information getting thrown at you, but it is a lot to try to encapsulate in such a short period of time. As I say, today's session should be getting recorded by Jo, so I'm sure she'll be forwarding a copy of that video to you, so you can play that back through if you think that there's anything you're not entirely sure about. But as I say, don't suffer in silence. If you do have any queries or anything, please use the contact forms that I've just listed and get in touch with us. So thanks very much for attending today, everyone. I hope everyone found that useful. And as I say, if you've got any questions or queries about what we've covered, please feel free to get back in touch, okay?